Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Undiscovered Decade, a podcast where we look into the missing films in our filmographies, the forgotten gems that we've dug up to present to you from the 90s. We're up to the end of the year for 1992, December, and as you can see from Corey's background photo, we decided to focus on one of our favorite actors we hadn't talked about yet through this whole podcast, Eddie Murphy. He did a film called The Distinguished Gentleman. He stars as Thomas Jefferson Johnson, a ne'er-do-well con artist who has a team of people that he usually does like small-time things. Like in that picture, that's the first scene. He's tricking a senator or a representative to pony up for a sex scandal just that he made up. That woman that Corey's blocking was pretending to be a sex worker that he had been calling. So stuff like that. He's now blackmailing the senator in that shot. When a famous senator dies with a similar name, Johnson, and I think it's actually Tom Johnson, it's that similar to his name. He comes up with this scheme to just
Jeff
run
Johnson.
for this. It's Jeff Johnson. So he goes with T. Jeff Johnson. That's right.
Because they only look at the last name when they vote.
Exactly. Yeah. So he realized.
So he basically he won based on name recognition.
Yeah,
Right.
People didn't realize.
Which is fantastic.
They didn't. They cut out all the pictures of him. It was literally just the
Right.
name on the billboard and everything.
Yeah, which has happened in the past. There's
it's
been
brilliant.
cases talked about where like a dog won. Where
Dead people have won elections.
they even mention in this, they ask the guy's wife. It's played by James Garner in a weird little cameo where he basically does the thing that happens in Dave next summer, which is the plot of Dave. He's having sex with one of his secretaries or assistants or something, and then has a heart attack and dies in his
Intern.
office.
She was an intern.
Yeah, which is fortuitous.
Yeah.
In 92 and 3.
Yeah, because when was the Clinton scandal?
Like 96.
97, 90, yeah,
95.
96. I was in middle school.
Yeah.
He got the idea from watching this movie.
It could have happened. For
I might have been in fifth grade. It was
Gentleman.
fifth grade.
Actually,
So,
that's
like,
funny. The campaign for
90s.
this film, the slogan was elect our leaders in November, come see the real ones in December.
Yeah, or come see what they.
Yeah, come see what they do in December.
Yeah,
But yeah, he ends up winning and brings his team of con artists as his staff to Washington. And it's basically like a sort of remake of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He learns the wrongs that he's been doing have affected people, and he could actually do some right in DC. Especially because, there aren't many African Americans in office. So he notices the over rampant racism in DC and all the wheeling and dealing that just spins everything around in politics, never gets anyone anywhere. So he thinks to himself, like, maybe I can con America into figuring out that they want to do good. So it becomes a little heartwarming. It's funny along the way. It's just a nice little film, which I think people don't think about in his filmography.
No.
It kind of comes off to me as like a political heist movie.
Yeah.
The
A
good guy
political comedy heist movie or something like that.
comes across as a bad guy using his powers to pull the wool over worse guys.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a great incisive scene with what Tristan's talking about. It's still relevant today, where Lane Smith is telling him about lobbyists. And he's like, well, which way are you on an issue? He's like, well, you got money on this side and money on this side. He's like, well, who's paying more? So that's the way he sways.
Right.
We know happens all the time with gerrymandering and stuff like that in the Senate.
Yeah, it's all the lobbying. The lobbyists are who control the government because they have the most money. Because who's going to care if I want something out of my town? Like, he goes down to Florida because there's been some pylons causing radiation on a local school. And what is he going to do? Because the electricity lobby had wanted to go through that town. And what the school kids aren't going to pay the senators to stop that. What are we going to do? And so obviously it's, do you take the moral high road or do you keep your seat, which is the argument for all politics.
The good thing with the movie is it never loses its edge, even though it goes into some area of pathos. And obviously, with that's subplot that you're talking about, it's so prescient. A lot of scenes in the movie are prescient. Like that reminds me of like Flint, Michigan, and all the contaminated water.
Sure.
There's another scene where they go duck hunting where I couldn't help but think of Dick Cheney and everything that happened with the quail hunt incident.
Yeah.
There's so
A
many
lot
things
of
that were just like
foresight.
ahead of their time.
Yeah, I think because that stuff just is cyclical. You know, it's
Yeah.
not the first time a senator shot someone
Right.
or a vice president or a president.
Right.
You know, I also think Eddie Murphy is, you know, we talk about his comedic chops. I don't think he ever loses it throughout his career, even when he's doing some of his bad stuff in the 2000s. I think that's some of the scripting. His timing is still good. And this is long before it starts getting a little bad. At least movie
This
quality.
is still
This
it's
is
still R-rated.
this is
Right.
before he started donning the fat suits and playing every role.
Right.
Well, he was still Coming to
You
America.
started seeing that in Coming to America 3 years
Yeah, that's
earlier. That's the first time I noticed, at least watching stuff, even if it's out of order, you notice that he starts getting into that there. And then the fat suits come in 96 when he does Nutty Professor. And he wants to be the whole family in the sequel.
Yeah.
So I think he just gets a little off the rails. Corey and I have often said Robert Zemeckis, got really fascinated with the CGI and the stop motion. That's why he made stuff like
the motion capture stuff.
like Beowulf.
and
And that's like all he wants to do. He just wants to play around with that technology. Well, Eddie got fascinated with Rick Baker's makeup. So he gets a little hung up on that.
You see it in like Coming to America, like you said. You see it in the Nutty Professor movies and Norbit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
For
even Bowfinger, he's playing two characters.
Halloween, I watched Vampire in Brooklyn.
Right, yeah,
that's
that's
he even does a weird, like a little bit of a white face. He plays an Italian guy out of the blue.
Mhm.
And that's the only weird part of the movie. The movie's fine until he shows up as that guy. It's like you could just continue being a vampire, which you were more interesting as.
Right.
So
They're trying to hedge their bets.
yeah, I understand why he thinks this is effective, but in hindsight, I don't think it really helped him.
For
And
me,
so something like this, he focuses better.
right. And Eddie's always good at playing characters who are grifters, who are they're silver tongued, they're fast paced, stuff like that. So the scenes where he's like conning people, you're like, I could see why people would fall for his charm.
Yeah, this is like Beverly Hills Cop. That
Yeah. He's like, you know how like Bill Murray likes to play iconoclast? He's the one who goes up against the squares. And you're like, the whole time you're like, I wish I had a 10th of the charisma as Eddie.
right?
I could just seduce all these people into going to my side, which is why he's perfect for a movie where he plays politics, where that's all you're trying to do is win people over to your side. And be
Right.
the person. So
Yeah, I think it was a really good fit for him.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed was that this is one of the few films he didn't write the story himself. So maybe that has something to do with where he gets fascinated with multiple characters. He just went along for the ride with this one, and it worked.
which is weird because I guess this came around a time where his star was on the wane because he had just done like another 48 hours and he was kind of regurgitating his act from the 80s. So
Yeah,
this was shortly before, like you said, like he'd do Nutty Professor and then be almost strictly PG rated movies. Like he stopped doing adult fare for a long, long time.
I've heard he wanted to do stuff for his many kids.
Yeah.
That happens with people, so I don't begrudge him that. But then it sort of hurt his overall presence in cinema.
It's weird because I think about like there are actors who within the past decade their reputations have changed. Because I think about my son's 14. I think about he never grew up with edgy Eddie. Like he never saw him do stand up, which I know we were.
I mean, we were too young too.
But what it would rerun on cable.
That's why we're
so we
doing
haven't
this.
seen that.
Yeah,
Well,
I've actually
I got
never
it.
watched them.
I got a thing. George Carlin, if you think
Right.
of him. When we were kids, we grew up with Shiny Time Station, and he was the
Right.
conductor.
Mr. Conductor.
Exactly.
But like when you get older and you find his old comedy routines, you're like, oh, I
Same thing
found
with
something. Oh,
Carlin, Saget,
yeah.
like
Yes, yeah. It seems people tend
So
to
I
mellow
feel
as
like
they
it
get
just-
older,
Yeah.
and just for us, it was just I mean, it was a shame to watch Eddie go through this period of like a kind of a drought in his career because he wasn't making creatively, fertile choices. But I mean,
Especially
at
'cause
least
we
this
were
was
in-
one of the last gasps before he got to that.
We were in high school when it started to go downhill. I think that's what's
Yes.
disappointing. Like it was perfect timing for us to get the movies that were coming out right in the early 90s.
Yeah.
So Gen Xers had the perfect time to watch Eddie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll make a comeback.
I
In
think
his-
he has.
Like,
I mean, I think he's gonna.
even
but
even in his old age, like if he gets like old, like he'll still be like doing like he'll be good. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
he was on the verge of it with Dreamgirls not too long ago, and then Dolomite is my name. He was close to doing it between that and the SNL that he hosted.
Yeah, I think he's made enough of a comeback that he's now like an elder statesman that if he were to do things that are like those,
Yeah.
he could compete for Oscars again if he wants. I
an
know he got
elder
really-
statesman, you say?
Yeah.
Oh
no,
yeah, was that a
It
pun?
popped into my head for some reason.
We should talk
Yeah.
about the director. The director's a really underrated comedy director.
Jonathan Lynn,
Yeah, he did My Cousin Vinny,
which also came out this year.
which was crazy that he did two really good movies within the same year.
Yeah, these are probably his two best, but go
Yeah,
on.
but this one didn't do as well, obviously. But he did Clue,
Oh, I
Really?
thought about
Great.
that already.
great comedy mystery. If anybody hasn't seen it, I know movies based on video games don't have the best reputation, but this is based on a board game, so maybe that's why it's so good. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's really good with ensembles because he also did Greedy, which is
Yeah.
a kind of underrated Michael J. Fox movie.
Yeah, that's his next thing.
Whole Nine Yards, which is really good.
That's still good. I think that might be his last one. Fighting Temptations, I've heard is good.
It's
Right.
okay. But yeah, he's actually a really underrated comedy director.
How do you feel about Sergeant Bilko, though?
I actually like Sergeant Bilko.
Oh, okay. I remember thinking it was a little dumb, but
Yeah.
that's fine. It's okay.
I like when Steve Martin's a rascal. He's a rascal.
Maybe I'll rewatch it again. Maybe that'll come up in 3 years.
That's true. Yeah. But who has a weird cameo in it? If anybody remembers Murphy Brown.
Well, it's a huge part. I didn't know who this guy was.
Grant Shoud from Murphy Brown shows up. And
Yeah,
he's the most overtly broad character.
Hmm. He
Yeah.
never really did
He
anything
was
else.
he was the assistant, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the guy that shoehorned
Get
himself
his shirt
into
ripped off at one point.
Johnson's campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bit of a weasel. The one issue I actually have with this movie involves him. He seems to be a go-getter. He never seems to be annoyed at Johnson. And then he suddenly takes like a heel turn and works for Lane Smith.
Right.
I think he's just, he's another opportunistic Washingtonian,
I think we missed the point at which he turned, though. He just
Yeah.
does.
No, I agree. I think it was because it seemed like he was on Johnson's side and then he wasn't.
Yeah, I'm generally fine with it, but there could have been one moment there.
Sure.
Maybe a scene where he's actually talking to Lane Smith.
Yeah, I feel like there was probably a deleted scene that
But you don't
would explain
necessarily
everything.
need it.
Which
I don't
makes
know.
sense because this movie's almost at the 2-hour point. So I could see why they probably didn't want to go over. I mean, back then comedies weren't going over 2 hours. So debatably,
Right.
people could say this might be a little too long.
Yeah,
people were like, this is getting too real, man. We
yeah.
Yeah.
gotta dial it back.
Between this and My Cousin Vinny, Lane Smith is in both. And he's supposed to be the like antagonist in both movies, but in this, he's
He
obviously
clearly is.
more malicious. Whereas in My Cousin Vinny, you can see he's just doing his job.
Right.
He's not actively trying to get them put up for murder, but
He does think they did it because the evidence
does think they did it,
shows
so-
him that they did.
and he actually congratulates them at the end.
Right. It is a really solid trial in My Cousin Vinny. Like when they figure out the tire tracks and everything else, like
Yeah.
how they could have seen something different, like that witness that was seen through the train
Right.
and everything else. It's really solid.
So yeah, but it goes to show like he's got a range because he can play a villain who's more ambivalent, and he can also play one that's a little more one note, and I think that works here.
Yeah.
If he was more ambivalent in this, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Perfect character name too, Dick Dodge.
Yeah, though the character names in this are great.
Yeah. Obviously Thomas Jefferson Johnson.
Joe Don Baker's in it, Olaf Anderson,
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
name.
Elijah Hawkins.
Yeah. I was looking at Celia Kirby. That's the love interest that's sort of trying to lobby him to do great things.
Mm-hmm.
She's lobbying with love.
Well, he wants it to be love. She does not care at first.
Yeah.
She's
then it
actually
becomes
like
love.
she's actually like doing her job.
Yeah.
And
Right.
She's an interesting person. She didn't really get a chance outside of this. She ended up on a TV show, I think. Something
yeah,
you
she
know what?
looks
She was in Leonard Part 6, which probably didn't help her career.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. And then she ended
See,
up on
she-
Diagnosis Murder.
that
So,
might be because I'm
that's
like she
why.
looked familiar to me.
Remember
Was she
from
was she
Leonard
just
Part
like
6?
no? It might have
Diagnosis
been
Murder.
it might have been from Diagnosis Murder. Was she
Oh, okay.
like a regular or was it just like one episode?
she's a huge part.
Then that's probably what it was.
She's one of
because
like
my-
the 4 people in his staff,
Yeah, my
including Dick Van Dyke.
my parents and grandparents used to be big into Diagnosis Murder when I was a kid, so that might
Yeah.
be where I'd recognize her.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've watched a handful of episodes.
None.
You don't know this,
I've
Jimmy?
seen none. No.
Stay tuned
Perfect
for our
show.
stay tuned for our Hidden Gems TV spinoff.
Anyway,
I think this is a really. I'm glad that we picked this out of all of Eddie's movies because I think this is definitely the one that, I mean, just looking at the box office, it tanked.
yeah,
Made like 80 million worldwide on a $50 million budget,
yeah.
and this, like I said, this is one of the last ditch efforts for him to kind of keep an adult audience before he started to veer more towards kid friendly stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if he thought that because this didn't do well, maybe I should veer into family-friendly
I
fare.
think that
Yeah.
probably influenced it.
It didn't even make 80 million. It says 46.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, that might be here.
yeah.
I'm looking at worldwide. Sorry.
Mm,
Yeah, internationally it made 39. Here it made 47. So 80.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, it didn't even make top 3 the first week it came out.
Well, I can see why it's I don't know. December's not a great time slot for something like this.
Well, they came out opposite stuff like A Few Good Men.
Right.
Aladdin had still been out. That came out around Thanksgiving, which was only a week. This came out December 4th. So that was just out.
And there's a
Body-
Christmas movie we're going to be talking about that probably swept it off the charts, I'm sure.
The Bodyguard actually moved up above it and had been out for 3 weeks.
Which is unheard of now because you don't see movies
Yeah.
going up the chart, they're going down.
Yeah. So and you have 2 kids films in Home Alone 2 and Muppet Christmas Carol. So
That's what I was going to bring up later here.
yeah. Sorry,
And-
I went into all your other
No, you're
films,
fine.
but
But even just looking at the reviews, it's got like a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes.
right, which doesn't make sense because it's not bad.
Like compared to Pluto Nash,
Yeah.
which has like what?
8?
Like an 8%, something like that. I mean, Eddie would do way worse after this.
Oh yeah. I did want to mention the person you're blocking is a recent Emmy winner, Shirley Ralph. She's been on Abbott Elementary, so she's having a bit of a comeback too. She was in
Huh.
this, but then never really showed up in a lot of other things. So it's kind of cool. She's getting her time to shine finally. She had actually been in the stage production of Dreamgirls on Broadway and was nominated for Tonys. I don't remember if she won, but she's tried to parlay that into film as well. And this was about it. And so now she's finally getting her time. I just thought
You know
that
what?
was
Now I'm
cool.
thinking about it. A way they could have tightened up the narrative. She should have been the love interest. Honestly,
I agree. Yeah, she barely gets anything. to
Wait,
do. I was
his
excited to see it.
cousin?
Yeah.
Well, they could have
Yeah,
just
that was the
switched the
thing.
Oh,
relation.
right. She,
Yeah, they
They
were
could have
Actually,
switched
his
the
is
relation somehow.
You sick son of a bitch.
well, just
You know
write
what
that
I
she's
meant.
not his cousin.
Just make it not his cousin, and it would have worked.
Well, they are in Florida, so like That
Florida
big-
man
Yeah.
marries his cousin.
This also is to move on, the screen debut of Chi McBride.
Oh wow.
Which is pretty
Boston
cool.
Public, baby.
Who's credited as just Chi in the credits.
Yeah, that was. I
Which
guess
is
he was trying to
badass.
go for the
He's
one
just like
name thing.
Chara.
Yeah. I did think to myself, oh, it's Chi McBride. He's going to be important. And then they left him in Florida. So I was like, oh, he's coming back. You can't leave Chi McBride behind.
And he came back in a big way.
Yeah, it was good. I liked his stuff.
The secret weapon.
You did. Did you like the stinger at the end? Or did you feel like that was trying to do sequel bait?
I didn't mind it. It could have
And they
been.
weren't really doing sequel bait, but I maybe didn't like the fact that they broke the fourth wall, but I thought it was funny, but maybe it's a blessing in disguise. The movie didn't do well because we probably would have got a lackluster sequel.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was a perfect end cap.
I
Because
think it was
obviously,
fine.
like,
Oh.
yeah, because he got up to where he was. He actually did some good in Washington. He's like, I kind of like this. And then it could leave it up for, a sequel, or it could just be like, that's the next logical step is, higher office. So
I mean, the end of Spin City, Michael J. Fox is walking in DC, and he's like, I'm meeting with this guy, Senator Keaton, which is a reference to his earlier show Family Ties. So they're doing stuff like that all the time. I think that
Well, that's
sets
not
it
the
up
end
to
of
be like
Spin City.
you could have the real end.
His end.
It's
Yeah.
the good end. So it sets up that you could see that he becomes something in DC. So it's the same idea. I think it's perfectly innocent intentions. So,
right, exactly.
and if you get a sequel, why not?
If we get a sequel, why not? You sound like Trump.
Could you imagine if they just did a sequel now?
I was thinking about that. I wonder if somebody was like, which one of your legacy characters would you like to see sequelized as legacy characters?
Yeah,
Nobody saw that movie.
it's a shame.
I could actually see that happening. Like Jeff Johnson comes back.
They could do a TV
To run
show
for
like a
president
House
now.
of Cards with him.
The undistinguished gentleman.
Yeah.
He's fallen on hard times.
The indistinguishable gentleman. He's just
No, you find out he's been a career senator for 40 years.
Yeah. Fell off his ways. No.
All right.
It'd be a good idea for like a
Get me
straight
Eddie's
show.
people. We'll write this for him.
Let's do it.
What would
Anyway.
you guys give the movie? I think I actually give this an A. This is one of my favorites that we got to this year.
Awesome.
Of the hidden gems, this was the hidden gemmiest.
Yeah.
I'd probably give it an A minus. A couple times where, like I said, they could have tightened up the narrative a little bit. But,
Yeah.
I think it's actually a lot more shrewd and clever than you think it is going into it, and obviously it's still very relevant. Which just goes to show, like you said, everything's cyclical and things don't change. So it's almost cautionary in that respect. But in terms of like showcasing Eddie, I think it's one of the better movies to utilize his fast talking chops. So, and when they do incorporate a little bit of drama into it, it's not trickly. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of this movie.
I'm like a minus ish. So, kind of because like I kind of agree with Corey with the whole like the story needs tightening up on certain spots. I felt like the pacing was a bit off too at certain points, but that could have just been me.
It was very deliberately paced.
Yeah, so maybe I just wasn't used to the pacing if it was like deliberately paced that way. But other than that, like this, like overall the story was great. It was funny. I did enjoy how it got a little heist-y at the end. So yeah, A-ish.
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 It's I'd give it a solid A, because realism within the comedy was like, this movie is timeless. Like, even though it was early 90s, you know that it's the exact same thing, just worse now.
Right.
And it's just, it's supposed to be a satire, but given everything that's happened in the past few years, it's clearly more of a documentary than anything.
Yeah.
And it was just well done.
Or maybe
I
if
mean,
it's
there
a
were-
prophecy. Did you think of
Yeah.
that, Jeff?
I'm telling you, everybody watch this movie. Like, it's just required viewing when you become a senator. And it's just
I
like,
think
this is what,
also into my
but-
A- issues, like it was a little too real.
right.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Don't shoot the
there,
messenger.
there were plot issue, like, you know, there were pacing issues, I guess, but it was still like, it was a fun movie. Like, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. So
Cool. So we're all pretty much in agreement.
For the most part.
Yeah.